Shakur Stevenson will be taking on Teofimo Lopez this upcoming weekend. Teofimo Lopez always tends to perform in the biggest stage. I mean, you looked at the Vasily Lomachenko, then goes up against Josh Taylor after some underwhelming performances at the 140.
He does have experience, fighting against southpaws now, but he keeps making the same fucking mistake against every fucking southpaw, and he just follows them.
And it seems like Teofimo Lopez always struggles with that type of style. And listen, a lot of people thought Teofimo lost that fight against Sander Martin. And what was Sander Martin's style? Slick southpaw that waits for you to throw and then tries to counter you. Don't get it twisted. Some people might think, oh, he fought Zepeda in the pocket. He's not going to do that against Teofimo Lopez. That is way too dangerous.
He is a lighter guy, so, I mean, could we expect Teofimo Lopez to stop Shakur Stevenson if he places the correct punch?
But before we even get to that, is Teo even going to be able to touch Shakur Stevenson?
Can he once again perform on the biggest stage of his career? Welcome back to another episode of the Last Round Podcast, where we cover everything from traditional boxing to influencer boxing and everything in between. Today's episode, we'll be going over Raymond Muratalla's majority decision win over Andy Cruz and giving our official predictions for Shakur Stevenson versus Teofimo Lopez. But before we get into the episode, make sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on all forms of social media. And now diving into the episode, like I just mentioned, this past weekend we had the IBF lightweight title on the line as champion Raymond Muratalla was able to retain it and defeat the up-and-coming contender Andy Cruz. Now, a very competitive fight, a majority decision. I think it was a very well-suited scorecard or a decision for Muratalla. A bit of the scorecards given from the judges were a bit lopsided, which did rise some questions online in debates whether or not it was actually that wide as some of the judges seem to have it. But at the end of the day, Andy Cruz was unsuccessful in his first ever title attempt and looks to bounce back after losing to Raymond Muratalla. Thoughts about this fight?
I thought overall, as a fight fan, I thought it was like super competitive. It felt like there was a lot of back and forth action. Felt like one fighter would win a round and then the other fighter would go into the corner and then make the adjustments and then come out for that next round and then win it. But I kind of wanted to ask you guys a question. But were you guys in agreement with the scorecards?
Well, I mean, I think Muratalla won the fight. I think it was close either way. Like you said, very competitive. I think it could have been a draw, and I think the decision to Muratalla is completely fine. He is the world champion at the end of the day, so maybe those close rounds, maybe you give him a little slight edge because he is the reigning champion. But the scorecards were a bit weird. 118, that's 10 rounds to 2. For Raymond Muratalla. I don't think any fighter won 10 rounds of that fight. So that was a bit interesting to see. I was very surprised. I know a lot of people on social media were talking about it. And I definitely do think the judges might have been on a little something, because no way Raymond Muratalla won 10 rounds of that fight.
Yeah, it did kind of seem as though there was maybe some bias. I think Raymond has fought there, I think 9 times, 10 times. So I think, maybe he's kind of built some type of audience. Some of these judges possibly have, judged his previous fights there. So maybe there was, he's also the A side as well. So you have to put that into consideration. But what do you think, Pablo?
I don't know if he's the A side. I mean, yes, he was champion, but the projections and the money line was on Andy Cruz to come out on top and to win his first ever world title. But I mean, look, I think the fight was very close. It was what a lot of people are saying, a competitive chess match, and it was very entertaining to see. Of course, I wasn't able to watch the full fight. I had other things going on, but I did watch the first half, and I mean, I was like, yo, I don't even know who's winning this first half. They're just going back and forth. And it was very calculated. I saw online a lot of people were praising Raymond Muratalla saying, yo, I did not, like Devin Haney, for example, stating that he was unaware of the game that Raymond Muratalla brings to the table and giving props for that. And a lot of people online were followed the same suit as Devin Haney. They were giving praise to Raymond Muratalla, unaware that he was capable of performing at this level, especially against a fighter like Andy Cruz, who a lot of people deem give him high praise, especially since he has a very successful amateur background. So very big moment. I think it was a close fight, and I think the scorecards were a bit wonky, it's based on what people are saying online, especially the 118, 110. I don't think I've seen a lot of people even give such a lopsided. I think the widest scorecard I've seen is an 8-4 for Raymond Muratalla, but that's about as far as or as wide as I've seen online.
Yeah, and maybe you can even say that some of those rounds could be also swing rounds. So it really just kind of depends. It really just depends on the judges and whatnot. What about you, Asa?
Yeah, man, I already said my thing, but I think the biggest thing for me, I was very impressed by Raymond Muratalla. I'm in agreement with the boxing fans. I did not think. Listen, I thought he was going to go into this fight and he was going to be very hesitant. I thought he was going to try to find like a big right hand, try to time Andy Cruz, be a little bit too stiff for him. And then, Andy Cruz was going to do his Cuban type of style of dancing and he was going to be able to outbox him. But I was very surprised. Raymond Muratalla, he came in with a fantastic game plan. He let his hands go. I think that was very important. He was putting together combinations and using his speed instead of his power, which was very smart. And another thing as well, he was cutting off the ring beautifully. If you look back at that fight, Muratalla was doing a fantastic job using lateral movements to pin Andy Cruz on the ropes and then throwing combinations. And I definitely do think that helped him out a bunch. I mean, the training camp that he had with Robert Garcia was, you already know they were working on that because Andy Cruz does have great footwork, but you didn't really see it that much. Muratalla really drilled it down and he was able to let his hands go and connect some great punches. So really impressed by Muratalla. I think this was his first title defense. He was an email champion, so he didn't actually win the belt in the ring. But I think this is a fantastic win for him. Obviously, the biggest of his career.
Yeah, a lot of people online, because I was checking on X for updates, and I was looking at it real time, and going into the championship rounds, people were saying, "Yo, this fight is way too close. These two upcoming last rounds are going to be the deciders." And I mean, based on what I've seen, a lot of people, I think even the judges gave Raymond Muratalla the last 2 rounds. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but I know for sure a lot of people were giving Raymond Muratalla online the last 2 championship rounds. So was that the tipping point, the turning of the tables there, the last 2 rounds where Raymond Muratalla showed his experience and showed, I mean, even though he didn't win the title, he was emailed it, but did he show his championship pedigree in those last 2 very needed rounds?
Yeah, I think last week when I gave my prediction, I went, my thinking into this fight was that it was a 50-50 fight, and I think it showed. It's like what I was talking about earlier. They were going back and forth, and I think that judge that gave it 118 to 110 didn't do justice to what we actually witnessed. And it was just back and forth action. But I think the key thing that really stood out to me, and I think that's the reason why Muratalla won, is truly just based off just the professional experience. Andy Cruz is a decorated amateur. I picked him as my prediction for him to win, but I do think that, it wasn't too much, but I think, there is a difference, going from fighting elite amateur competition to elite professional competition. And I think those last 2 rounds, in my personal scorecard, I did have Muratalla winning those 2 scorecards. So it's possible though. I haven't looked at the scorecards and what all 3 judges individually scored those last two rounds, but I wouldn't be surprised if they favored Muratalla.
Yeah, they're huge, man, and especially specifically that 12th round, man. Like, both of these fighters knew, like, this is a very competitive fight. And I was so surprised that Cruz wasn't trying to finish strong. You know, Muratalla went in there and, yeah, he's like, okay, I got to get this round. This is very important. And Cruz, yeah, he was just kind of moving around, wasn't really engaging too much. And I definitely do think that shot him in the foot, you know. I don't know. He seemed very confident when the fight ended. And even when they were announcing the scorecards, right, he thought he was going to win. But, I mean, it was very competitive. And I think he's probably looking back today at those championship rounds and thinking, yeah, I should have, you know, put my foot on the gas.
You know, for me, I think, this fight kind of reminded me of a fight like way back in the day. Felix Trinidad against Oscar De La Hoya. It was kind of back and forth. These two guys undefeated, fighting at their prime age. And then Oscar De La Hoya kind of lets his foot off the gas the last 2 rounds. And a lot of, Felix came out victorious. And a lot of people say that, if Oscar maybe would have, pressed the action a little bit instead of just trying to be out on, mid-range or whatever, he could have won. Mm-hmm. I think that's possibly what we saw. And I think, Andy Cruz is going to be looking at the tape and, feel the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Andy Cruz, of course, taste his first ever professional defeat in his 7th fight. Nothing to be ashamed of course. He went up against a good fighter in Raymond Muratalla. Now, I would honestly say they both benefit from this fight because a lot of more doors open up for both of these fighters. Raymond Muratalla retains his championship, and he also gets the respect, and he also gets a lot of fantasy matchups that people online are putting them up against for unification or against other top elite 135 pounders, and as well as Andy Cruz. A lot of people want to see him again and think that he is still in a very elite contender at the 135. However, I do want to talk about how after the fight they were interviewing Raymond Muratalla in his locker room, and Muratalla himself stated that he believes that Andy Cruz should be going down to super featherweight 130 because he just doesn't really have the punch to affect at 135. And a lot of people, that sparked a lot of debate online saying, yo, look at your face. How can you say that he has no power and this and that? So what are your thoughts about that comment from Muratalla stating that due to the lack of power that Andy Cruz brings to the table, he should consider moving down the weight class?
I think a lot of people are viewing that as a negative way, but maybe you can view it as, very sportsmanlike. You know what I'm saying? He's trying to give, an ex-opponent, some advice. You know what I'm saying? I do think it was weird for him to say that when he did have, both of his eyes kind of like puffy up or whatever, swollen. But, I mean, you can't say that Andy Cruz rocked Muratalla ever, throughout the whole course of the fight. I mean, he just kept going forward. It felt like, Andy Cruz, obviously did touch him up. He did land some eye-catching shots, but it didn't stop Muratalla. I mean, he just kept coming forward.
Yeah, and I feel like the bruising thing, optically, it looks bad, right? But all the bruising shows that Cruz is a very precise puncher. That means he was just punching on the eyes. He's a great, he has great precision. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily translate to power just because, Raymond Muratalla's eyes were bruised. That doesn't mean Andy Cruz has crazy power. It just means he was hitting those areas very often. And, that's what was happening. So I think probably Muratalla is probably right. I don't think Cruz, at least in this fight, he didn't really showcase too much of the aggressiveness. He was mainly on the back foot this whole time, so he was relying more on his Cuban type of style, using speed and footwork and trying to outbox Muratalla. So maybe he wasn't putting as much power behind his shots. I don't know, but he did seem, he is smaller than Raymond Muratalla, so it's maybe something to consider for Cruz to go down. I don't think he has to, but it's an option.
I think there was a lot of controversy, people giving backlash to Muratalla's comments, but Andy Cruz said it himself, and even Eddie Hearn said it after the fight with I saw some interview clip or whatever. They said that he can go down to 130. So I'm kind of surprised that he didn't start his professional journey at 130, try to get a championship there, and then just go up to 135. In regards to the power, look, Muratalla is a big dude. He started his first few fights were at 140. So he slowly made his way down to 135. And so I think power definitely helps you in any weight class or whatever. But, Andy Cruz is just so talented. He doesn't really need power. He can just, outbox his opponents and just come out victorious. But I don't know. What do you guys want to see next with Andy Cruz? Do you guys want to see him go down to 130 or stay at 135?
I really wouldn't. I would rather him stay at the lightweight division just because of the possible matchups for him. I think it's a bit more of a loaded division than the 130. The 130 is a bit a little barren at points, and I don't think they're just lacks the competitiveness in that division. Whereas the 135 is regarded as one of the more exciting divisions in boxing. So, winning and getting big fights in that division would guarantee more credibility for whoever fights. So I would rather see him at 135. I saw a lot of people still match him up against some of the other champions like Abdullah Mason, Sam Noakes, even right there, Shakur Stevenson if he decides to come back down. So there's a lot more for him at 135, and I would rather see him there because I think he still can play a huge role in the division. So that's my thoughts about that.
Well, I don't know. I feel like the 135 is kind of strange at the moment because we got one champion. We got actually a vacant title because Gervonta Davis is at large. He's a fugitive. They're actively searching for him for a warrant. And so they stripped him. I think the WBA, I think he was the WBA champion. They stripped him. So now that one is wide open. The WBA is wide open at 135. Shakur Stevenson is the WBC champion, and he's fighting for a world title at 140. And I'm pretty sure if he wins that world title, he's going to stay at 140. I don't think he's going to go back down to 135. So two of the champions are currently busy right now. I guess one of the champions, but the other one is completely vacant. Abdullah Mason, he's a youngin', man. He's super young. And he is a world champion. So it's I don't know, the 135 division is a bit strange right now. We don't have two champions really in the division, only Muratalla and Abdullah Mason. But, I still think there's great talent there. But it's just, I don't know if it's... Another thing as well, Muratalla said he wants the winner of Shakur and Teofimo. So maybe he's planning to move up to 140. Like, what is going on with the division? I don't know. The world champions are it seems like they're all migrating away, either from the sport or to a new weight class, except Abdullah Mason. I think he's going to stay there for a while. So, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I think the 135 is going to have a lot of moving parts very soon. So, I think the promoters like Eddie Hearn should and Top Rank should wait and see before actively choosing their fighter's next opponent.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what's next for Andy Cruz. As for Raymond Muratalla, he retains his title, and like I mentioned earlier, lots of potential matchups for him, especially a unification against Abdullah Mason, which a lot of people were... I don't know if I can take it serious or not, but they're saying that Abdullah Mason would beat the bricks, put hands on Raymond Muratalla. And I'm like, yo, did you guys watch this fight right now? Andy Cruz is regarded as a top contender, so it's going to be a harder matchup than saying that Abdullah Mason would beat the bricks out of Raymond Muratalla. But that's a potential unification matchup at the 135. So a lot of moving parts that's going to be coming up in the division, and I'm excited to see where they both go. But now that we mentioned one of the champions, Shakur Stevenson, he has a fight coming up. It's the biggest fight of the year so far to end off the first month of 2026. Shakur Stevenson will be taking on Teofimo Lopez this upcoming weekend, and it's a big one. It's about to be sold out arena, and we are looking at a potential stylistic masterpiece, because they both bring their own different styles, two styles clashing in the ring. So it's going to be very, very intriguing to see who comes out on top between Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez. Thoughts about the matchup?
Yeah, man, I'm very excited for this fight. You know, I've been waiting for it since 2026 began. You had to wait just 1 month, the end of the month, January 31st, and you're going to see a mega fight between Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez. This is a huge fight. This is going to be Shakur's biggest fight of his career, no questions asked. For Teofimo Lopez, I don't know if I'd say his biggest fight. I think it's still going to be Vasily Lomachenko as his biggest fight, but this is still, I think, his second biggest fight of his career. This is a massive fight against Shakur Stevenson. The winner is going to skyrocket in the pound for pound rankings. We're talking about number 5, number 4, maybe for some people even number 3. So depending on how these guys perform on Saturday is it's going to tell us a lot. You know, the boxing community is going to tell us a lot. So I'm very excited for this fight. I can't wait.
Yeah, I think another reason why people are very excited about this fight is just the different clashes of styles, right? You got Shakur Stevenson, who is a lighter dude, started his career, you know, in the lighter weight classes, and then, you know, he slowly moved up to, you know, now at 140. You know, he's just, the way that I would describe him is just your slick, smart fighter. You know what I'm saying? This guy, he's able to capitalize on his opponent's mistakes and make them pay, you know, and then come out victorious like that. And then you have on the other side Teofimo Lopez, who, you know, at 135 just really made a big name for himself, you know, established himself as a strong power puncher at that weight class, went up to 140 and became a world champion there as well. So now it's just him trying to defend, you know, his belt. You know, Teofimo Lopez is a guy who's very explosive, and, you know, he does have power in both hands, although lately we haven't seen much of that pop. Yeah. But, you know, Shakur Stevenson, he is a lighter guy. So, I mean, could we expect Teofimo Lopez to stop, you know, Shakur Stevenson if he places the correct punch?
Well, I mean, I think this is his biggest chance he's had in a while, because he moved up to 140, and his first fight, he got a stoppage there. After that, he hasn't gotten a stoppage. He hasn't really shown the power that he was showing at 135. So, you know, it kind of shows us that, you know, when he was fighting smaller guys, his power was more noticeable. Well, he is fighting a smaller guy now, Shakur Stevenson. Like you said, he's been in those lower weight classes. He was a stick when he went professional. Guy was super skinny. He had like no muscle on him, and now he's built up his frame a little bit. First fight at 140. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see if he can take Teofimo Lopez's power. But before we even get to that, is Teo even going to be able to touch Shakur Stevenson? That's what I'm thinking. Because, like, man, Shakur is crazy slick, and he just has that type of pedigree. You know, he's a silver medalist, I believe, and he's just so good on the outside. His jab is amazing. His reflexes are amazing. And it seems like Teofimo Lopez always struggles with that type of style. We were watching the Teo's fight against Sander Martin. And listen, a lot of people thought Teofimo lost that fight against Sander Martin. And what was Sander Martin's style? He was a southpaw, slick southpaw that waits for you to throw and then tries to counter you. You know, he uses his lateral movements to turn Teofimo Lopez, and he in fact knocked down Lopez with the hook when Teo was coming in. So it's going to be interesting to see, man. I think Teo relies a lot on his athleticism, his explosivity, and his natural gifts. So sometimes he breaks the fundamentals. And that's going to be hard to do when you're going up against Shakur Stevenson, who is like the definition of boxing fundamentals. So the styles are definitely there. It's going to be very interesting to see how these guys interact in the ring.
Yes, there's a lot of talk about it. The thing that is also in talks about this matchup is the fact that Teofimo Lopez always tends to perform in the biggest stage. I mean, you looked at the Vasily Lomachenko. During the time, the current pound-for-pound fighter in the world upsets him. Then goes up against Josh Taylor after some underwhelming performances at the 140, including the Do I Still Got It infamous clip, and performs against Josh Taylor. And now he's up against Shakur, who is skyrocketing, who's been searching for a big fight, who's regarded amongst many as one of the best fighters on the planet. Can he once again perform on the biggest stage of his career? I think he will. I think this fight will definitely be a very close and very competitive fight. Yes, the Sandor Martin fight and also the Jermaine Ortiz were very underwhelming performances from Teofimo Lopez, but as shown, and he's proved me wrong before, if he has a good opponent against them, he's going to come in motivated, and he's going to come in to prove a point, and this is a big fight for him, and I believe he's going to come in the best shape of his life, and I think this will be the defining fight for Teofimo at the 140 division. So I think there's a lot riding for him, and he also has a lot of experience fighting southpaws as well now, so that does give him a favor, and he's just a very explosive fighter that can catch Shakur off guard if Shakur is not on his pedigree or not on his game. But then Sugar Shakur, I mean, we're talking about, like you said, the master, essentially the embodiment of fundamentals of today's modern day boxing. So he is a master of the frame. He's a master of timing. He's a master of keeping you at range. So it's definitely going to be a very intriguing matchup, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah. Let's break this fight down. How do you guys see Teofimo Lopez? Like, what are the 2-3 things that Teofimo Lopez has to do in order to come out victorious Saturday?
I would say he has to knock him out. He has to punch him. He has to show up. No, but I think the big thing is to apply pressure on Shakur. Shakur, of course, it's going to be very hard to apply pressure just because of how good laterally, his lateral movements are elite for Shakur, and it's very hard to even keep him on the ropes, especially if he does end up pulling up like a Edwin de los Santos type of performance where he just kind of avoided any type of altercation. But yeah, I think calculated pressure is definitely going to be, and it's going to be apparent during the fight. I think it is going to happen, but he has to constantly pressure him, keep Shakur on the back foot, keep him on the ropes, and honestly just be a very explosive fighter. I mean, that's what he's known for. He's known for being explosive, for being very athletic, and he uses that to his advantage. I mean, there's many clips of him just absolutely just exploding 0 to 100 real quick, catching his opponents off guards, dropping them, or even stopping them. So it is definitely something that Teofimo Lopez will have to bring, just being very explosive, trying not to let Shakur gather the data to understand his rhythm and his pace, and for him to dictate. He's got to make it very, very unexpected for Shakur, and I think that's one of the ways that he can truly just surprise Shakur during the fight.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is he has to cut the ring off. I think this has been one of his biggest problems this whole time. Going back to the Sandor Martin fight and the Jermaine Ortiz fight, the biggest thing was cutting off the ring. He could not get his opponent just used lateral movements, and Teofimo would just, okay, I'm going to follow you, instead of cutting off the ring with him. So that's going to be the biggest thing, because Shakur is going to be on his footwork A game. He's not going to fight like Zepeda. Don't get it twisted. Some people might think, oh, he fought Zepeda, kind of going at him and, in the pocket. He's not going to do that against Teofimo Lopez. That is way too dangerous. So best believe he's going to go back to what he knows best, and that's outside, in the range, using footwork, using your jab. He's not going to be in the pocket with Teofimo Lopez. So Teo has to cut off the ring. I'm praying that they were working on this in the training camp. Please, Lopez Sr. I know you talk a lot of shit, but, actually teach your son a couple things, So that's the biggest thing. And another thing is he has to get a little physical with Shakur Stevenson. You can't get into a pretty boxing fight with this guy, man, because you're not going to win. You have to make it a little dirty, a little physical, a little unorthodox, and he's good at doing that. He naturally does unorthodox athletic things, not really by the books. So that's what he has to do, man. Get a little physical on him, cut the ring off, let your hands go. Don't try to look for just the one shot, Let your hands go, be explosive, throw combinations, instead of just one punch, and that's going to give him the best path to victory.
Yeah, I would say the number one thing for me would be just cutting off the ring, man. Because Pablo, you did say that he does have experience, fighting against southpaws now, and I think it's gonna come into play as well. But he keeps making the same fucking mistake against every fucking southpaw, and he just follows them. Mm-hmm. So if he's able to cut off the ring, it's gonna it's gonna be very good for him. And I think he has to explode with multiple combinations. Once he's able to cut off the ring and, make the ring a little bit smaller for him, he's going to find pockets to just explode because, Shakur Stevenson is faster than him. He has faster hands. But what I believe Lopez can do to counteract that is just explode, with multiple punches. And, Shakur isn't going to be able to time that. And, I think that's why we saw Lopez be so successful at that 135-pound division. He would explode, just out of nowhere, just explode with multiple punches. Lately, I don't really see that much. You know what I'm saying? When he fought against Barbosa, there was no explosivity. You know what I'm saying? It looked like, it didn't look the best. But I would say those things, Lopez, if he does that, then, he could come out victorious. But what about for Shakur? Because for me, it's like what you said, Asa. He's going to be on his on the treadmill all night. We're going to see a similar version of him when he fought against Edwin de los Santos. Shakur Stevenson, all he has to do is follow the three S's. He has to be very smart, and he's going to be smart defensively. Shakur Stevenson is sharp. Every time he throws with intentions. He's very accurate, and he only throws when he knows that he's going to be able to land something. And then the third one is he has to stay sharp. You know what I'm saying? Just be sharp. And just be quick. Be the first one in and out. And I see him winning.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. He's got to use his jab and use his footwork. I know people say all the time, De Los Santos fight. I'll cut him a little bit of slack because suppose he did hurt his hand. His hand was hurting that day. His hand was hurting that day, so he decided to just give a very boring fight. I don't think he's gonna do that this time. Okay, I don't think he's gonna be that defensive. I do think he's gonna be a little bit engaging a little bit more. With that being said, yeah, I mean, just jab him, use lateral movements, continue to keep on turning. He's got to keep on turning Teofimo Lopez because Lopez loves to set. He loves to set. If you just continue to pivot, Lopez has to reset, and that means he doesn't get his hands off. So Shakur, he just got to stick to what he does best, which is that's why it's easy for him. He doesn't have to change anything. He doesn't have to perform crazy. He just has to do what he does best and keep Lopez outside the range. And Lopez is eventually going to get frustrated, which is something that does happen. If you look at those past fights, Lopez begins to get frustrated and he starts lunging in with right hands, way too hopeful, not setting up anything. Shakur is going to see that from a mile away, man. And once he starts getting in his head, starts getting tail frustrated, that's when Shakur is really going to start stepping it up. So, I think Shakur is going to do what he does best, and that's, box.
Yeah, there's a lot of big things to consider when trying to make your prediction for this fight. But I think I'm ready to give my official prediction, and I've been saying it for some time now when the fight was announced, who I thought was going to win, and I'm sticking with it. I think Shakur will be becoming the new, WBO 140 champion and defeating Teofimo Lopez in the biggest fight of his career, a fight he's been calling for. A moment like this is what is needed for Shakur, and I think he is going to go in and perform at his very best. So it should be very interesting, and I'm very excited to see how it develops on fight night.
Yeah, but who do you want to win?
I want Shakur to win.
You want Shakur to win?
Yeah, I want Shakur to win. Okay. I wouldn't mind if Teofimo comes out on top. I like both fighters, but I mean, contrary to popular belief, I know it's not very common, but I like Shakur. I'm a fan of Shakur, so I would like to see him come out on top and get the victory.
Yeah, I think for me, look, I really like Lopez, and I want Lopez to win, but it's just going to be a Shakur night. Shakur, you know, he's coming up a weight class, so he's going to be even faster. He's going to be even quicker. He's going to be, you know, he's just going to be just a lot faster. And I think we've seen a decline in Lopez's speed and explosivity in these recent fights. And so, I don't know. It's going to look like he's going to look like a fish out of water.
Yeah, man. Listen, I am a Teo fan, right? I love Teofimo Lopez. I know his antics can be a bit much. You know, sometimes he goes a little off the rails. But this guy's such a character, you know, and you can't lie. He does perform under the brightest lights. I was super impressed against Loma. I was super impressed against Josh Taylor. And this is going to be, you know, his next biggest fight of his career. That being said, man, Teo just got that weakness, you know. He's got that weakness where he struggles to cut off the ring. He struggles to pin down these really tricky fighters that use footwork. And if you can't do that against Sander Martin or Jermaine Ortiz, what the hell makes you think you're going to be able to do that against Shakur Stevenson, who is so much better at doing that? So I think Shakur is going to pull off the victory. I don't think it's going to be that easy. I don't think it's going to be like a shutout or anything. I don't think Shakur is going to outclass Teofimo Lopez. I don't think that. I think Teo, he's going to put up a good fight. You know, he is going to perform the best, his brightest. He's going to perform. So there's going to be a couple rounds where, you know, Teo might just put the foot on the gas and just try to get Shakur Stevenson out of there. But I do think Shakur is just a little bit too smart for him, and he will get the decision victory.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, you said earlier that, you know, Lopez's antics outside of the ring, you know, can rub off the wrong way. But I think for me, that's the reason why I kind of like Lopez, and that's another reason why I would like for him to win. You know, I don't want to say it's better for boxing, but it's definitely a lot more entertaining for sure. Yeah. You know, just seeing Lopez and, you know, just some of the things that he says and some of the things that he does, you know. And I think it's great, and it brings a lot of eyes to the sport. Not to say that Shakur can't bring eyes to the sport, but I mean,
there is a difference. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Yes, it should be a very, very competitive night of boxing between two elite fighters in today's age. So I'm expecting a good fight, a very good competitive fight. It should be enough to spark a lot of debates, a lot of controversy, maybe a lot of talk on social media before and after, especially. So it intrigues me in that way. I always look forward to seeing the reaction from the boxing fans on Twitter to see their takes and insights about whatever fight has happened. So there's a lot of talks about this one, biggest fight of the year so far, and I think it's a great way to kick off 2026. So we have a lot to look forward to. All three of us are picking Shakur to beat Teofimo Lopez in a very close and competitive fight. But speaking about, you know, Lopez and Shakur, we also got, Shakur was training with Keyshawn Davis, and Keyshawn Davis over the weekend.
His brother.
His brother. But Keyshawn Davis over the weekend was making some headlines due to his reaction to Andy Cruz losing. And as we know, Andy Cruz and Keyshawn have some beef from the amateurs where Andy Cruz beat Keyshawn 4 times. And
well, actually, I don't see it as beef. It seems as though it's only coming off from one side. It seems as though the only beef that someone has is Andy, and that's because he's a sore loser.
Mm-hmm. Well, regardless, a lot of people were kind of upset about Keyshawn's reaction to the loss that Andy Cruz suffered against Raymond Muratalla of him with the belt, just kind of, showcase, kind of symbolizing, belt to ass, making fun of him and stuff like that. So we also have to keep in mind that Keyshawn has got a fight with Jermaine Ortiz, a former opponent of Teofimo Lopez. So it's, if people are saying, hey, yo, Karma, this video could age bad. It could age like fucking milk if Keyshawn Davis is out here making fun of Andy Cruz for losing, and this upcoming week he loses against Jermaine Ortiz. What's that going to say? It's going to say karma. So we also have that to look forward to as well. We got some of that fights. We also got some fights at the 154 with the return of the Boogeyman Mortuzali taking on Josh Kelly. We had the return of Majimov as well. So a lot of things have been moving at the 154 in other divisions. We have the 140 also kicking up with Keyshawn's return after failing to make weight last year against De Los Santos at 135. So overall, next week or this upcoming week should be a very eventful day of boxing, and which is why I always like seeing the reaction from the boxing fans, because it's always funny to see and entertaining to see how they all react to these outcomes. But is there anything else you guys would want to talk about, including the Adam 22? No, I'm kidding. We are not talking about that. Let us know down below your official predictions for Shakur as he looks to become a 140 world titleist against Teofimo Lopez. Let us know your official predictions for that fight. Also, let us know your reactions to Andy Cruz versus Raymond Muratalla. And let us know, who do you think is next for both of these fighters? Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on all forms of social media. We are on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Lastly, we're trying to build up a community on Discord, and you guys joining would be greatly appreciated. This was Pablo, and I'm with Rudo and Asa, and this was the Last Round Podcast. Thank you for watching.